me, the recovery has to be rooted in values. And when I think about the work that I've done, the values-driven work I've done in my career, fighting for workers and families, that's what I'm going to be centering in my response. And frankly, it's because of those values that I'm particularly concerned that someone else in this race, Jake, has, in the lead up to this race, opposed raising the minimum wage to $15, supported one of the most anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ politicians in Massachusetts in Lou Evangelitis, the sheriff. I think we need to know what the values are of the candidates in this race if we're going to talk about truly tackling the challenges that we face, both because of COVID and that have existed long, long before this. And I certainly know what my workers-driven, families-driven values are as I approach this work.
The other great crisis we're facing is a lack of confidence in our institutions. Americans and people of Massachusetts no longer believe the government can get stuff done for them, partly because all politicians do, like we've heard from Jesse, and I'm sure like we'll hear from Ben, is launch baseless, vitriolic attacks against one another instead of focusing on what is actually the priority of the moment, defeating Donald Trump and going to work for Americans in a pragmatic, collaborative manner.
I certainly don't think it's baseless to ask for clarity when we're talking about an economic recovery that must center some of the most vulnerable among us on a candidate's position when it comes to raising the minimum wage, something that we know is important to racial equity and economic equity, to get clarity on support for one of the worst anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ plus elected officials in this state. Things that have happened just in recent years. I'm sorry that Jake Auchincloss finds that baseless, but I think it's central to answering the questions of what the values of this district are.
Tim, I'm going to ask for a minute because I've got two rebuttals to make. So first, the reason I have the first union endorsement in the race and the reason I've continued to build strong union support north and south in this field is because I'm a champion for a living wage, a higher minimum wage, and a dignified retirement. And I was a co-doctor of the Welcoming City Ordinance in Newton that made us a sanctuary city and pushed back on Donald Trump's dangerous and hateful agenda. So while Jesse Rommel is a wonderful communicator and a good tweeter, I've actually done the work and walked the walk.
And so I want to, quite frankly, bring it back to something that Jake just said. Jake, I'm delighted that you enjoy my tweets and thank you for your compliment about my communication skills, but I'm sure you didn't mean to dismiss the work that I've done on the ground, advocating with Raise Up Massachusetts directly for a $15 minimum wage, for paid family and medical leave, earned sick time, the work that I've done running external affairs at Planned Parenthood, fighting for reproductive justice, which we know is economic justice and racial justice. So I just want to make sure, I'm sure you're not dismissing that policy work by saying that I'm simply a good tweeter. Some of us have been directly involved in these fights for a long time. And I'm so glad you're on the bandwagon for raising the minimum wage. I know that's a transition for you, but I'm glad you've arrived at that position.